In this episode, we learn about the spiritual teacher who carried the message of bhakti to the West and transformed the lives of thousands of people, which sparked an international sensation. I'd like to introduce you to my spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. He's affectionately referred to as Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was born in Calcutta in 1896, and he was raised in a loving family devoted to Krishna. He received a British-style education and studied philosophy, economics, English, and Sanskrit. But he declined his diploma in solidarity with Mahatma Gandhi's policy that the youth decline it in opposition to the British rule. At 26, he met his spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, a towering teacher in the Bhakti lineage. During their first meeting in 1922, Bhaktisiddhanta instructed him to take the Bhakti teachings of Sri Chaitanya to the English-speaking world. Prabhupada married and had children and ran several pharmaceutical businesses. During this time, he honored his guru's instruction as he also wrote articles in English, translated sacred texts, and published a magazine called Back to Godhead, distributing it himself from door to door and table to table in the streets of New Delhi. When the time came, he accepted the renounced order of life, or sannyas, at which time he completely committed himself to fulfilling his spiritual master's earlier instruction. Before he left to the West, he lived in near solitude for several years in the ancient holy town of Vrindavan. This is the place where Sri Krishna performed his earthly pastimes and is decorated with thousands of temples and many holy places. Prabhupada was quite old at this time, and he felt he had only a little bit of time to act on his spiritual master's orders. He had decided that he should have some books of the multi-volume Srimad Bhagavatam before leaving for the West, and he had decided he would go to New York. So he worked tirelessly, translating the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, comprised of 3 400-page volumes, and he did this during the night. He kept the habit he developed then at waking at 1 a.m. every night to translate throughout the rest of his life. After all, the Srimad Bhagavatam was a massive tome of 12 cantos, and each canto had 2 or 4 lengthy books. And in order to continue his life work of translating and commenting on thousands of verses, waking early became especially necessary when his preaching work became successful and he was tending to thousands of disciples, more than 100 temples, traveling around the world constantly, attending events, and meeting with the press, dignitaries, and other well-known people every day. Because he largely gave up sleep, he was able to make a lasting contribution to world literature with his translations and commentaries on the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Sri Ishopanishad, Upadeshamrita, and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and other important Gaudiya Vaishnava texts. He eventually published more than 80 volumes, which have now been translated into more than 100 languages. By making these rare texts available to the world, he attracted the attention of professors, scholars, theologians, and seekers around the world to Bhaktivedanta and the Bhakti practices. His commentaries brought the traditional wisdom of these writings into a contemporary context. And he made even deeper comprehension of their spiritual meaning along with practical application in one's life. Surely this is one reason why he was able to make such an impact on so many people. Within the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, Prabhupada's achievements are viewed as perhaps the fulfillment of a 500-year-old prediction that someone would take Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings from India into the world. At the age of 69, he crossed the Atlantic Ocean by cargo ship, not a luxury liner, and he showed up in New York City utterly alone with a message that ran completely contrary to the prevailing culture. and on the journey he suffered 2 heart attacks, and in his diary he described how he came so close to death at that time. When he arrived in New York, he had no money or international backing. He carried copies of the first 3 books of the Srimad Bhagavatam he had translated, along with an unmatched determination to carry out the order of his spiritual master, and a heart intensely compassionate for the suffering of the world. After struggling for food and shelter in New York for several months, he acquired a few friends who helped him find a tiny storefront on New York's Lower East Side, which became a stable location. Shortly after, he decided to do a public kirtan of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra at Tompkins Square Park with a few new followers. Their kirtan garnered media attention, and more people joined Prabhupada's growing band of followers. From this first offering of kirtan, he performed many other public kirtans and specifically had his disciples to do the same. He sent his fledgling disciples all over the world to perform kirtan and teach bhakti. In fact, it was the daily street kirtans of Prabhupada's disciples in cities around the world that not only attracted more followers to Srila Prabhupada's growing movement, but introduced kirtan to the world. Objectively, Prabhupada's kirtans were the genesis of the rise of the popularity of kirtan in the West, and for this he has been dubbed the Divine Minstrel by Philip Goldberg in American Veda. In 1966, with only a handful of disciples, he registered his movement called the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and his organization has now become known by its acronym ISKCON. Now, those in attendance at the signing of the documents really had trouble understanding why he was calling it an international society, but within a few years it became an international sensation because he was able to speak to the needs of the moment. The youth of America were fed up with materialism and the pursuit of consumerism. And as far as they could tell, the world was falling apart, much in the same way people today perceive current situations. They had turned from religious dogma and the requirement of blind faith. They wanted genuine spirituality and were looking for universal truths and to know the meaning of life. Now, for this, they looked to drugs to expand consciousness and sex to free them. But these bankrupt ideas were futile and dangerous for many. In fact, if sex and drugs were the answer, then everyone would be liberated and happy by now. Prabhupada brought the philosophical rigor of Bhaktivedanta to America, then Europe and other continents, with its timeless truths about the Atma, or the self, the personal feature of the Absolute, the energies of the Supreme, the laws of karma and the gunas, or the modes of material nature, and how to become free from suffering and the oppressive illusion of the material world by serving our dearest friend, the sweet Absolute, Sri Krishna. He so coherently argued the Bhaktivedanta philosophy and metaphysics that he was able to answer the haunting questions of the seekers who approached him. He gave them enthralling kirtans of the Mahamantra, wholesome vegetarian food, philosophy, literature, a way of living the bhakti path, and the ability to see the world with new eyes. In short, he gave them a way of being in the world free of drugs and bad habits that enabled them to experience lasting higher states of consciousness. He circled the globe 14 times in just 12 years, demonstrating through his personal example that bhakti was easy, joyful, and brought meaning to life. He opened 100 temples, which were dynamic centers of spiritual education, worship, and community in cities and towns across the globe. And long before sustainability became a global buzzword, Prabhupada established many farm communities. His motto was simple living, high thinking, and he insisted that unless people understood this principle, they couldn't be happy and wouldn't have the time for or inclination for a serious spiritual pursuit. And after witnessing some young children foraging for food in a garbage pile, he told his disciples, "No one within 10 miles of our temples should go hungry. I want you to begin feeding people immediately." His disciples took this instruction very seriously and established what's called Hare Krishna Food for Life, which is the world's largest vegetarian food distribution program, serving millions of meals daily with projects in over 60 countries. Through his Food for Life program and his free Sunday Love feasts, which he had organized every week at all of his centers, he single-handedly popularized vegetarianism in the West. In 1972, he established the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, which became the world's largest publisher of Vedic literature. And regardless of all these major milestones, Srila Prabhupada didn't claim any credit. Again and again he said, "I'm simply the servant of my spiritual master. I have no power. Everything is coming from Krishna." In fact, even people familiar with the Hare Krishna movement often don't even know the person behind the movement. What Srila Prabhupada accomplished wasn't just rare, it was unprecedented. And Harvard professor Harvey Cox said Prabhupada's life is an astonishing, quote, tale of faith, determination, and success beyond anyone's expectation. He is 1 in 1,000, maybe 1 in 1,000,000. Prabhupada's strength wasn't just his intellect or his organizational abilities, which he had great acumen in the world affairs and business, but it was his purity and excellent qualities that attracted people. He lived what he taught. Though he was aristocratic, knowledgeable, and had a piercing intellect, he was extremely humble, kind, generous, funny, and profoundly compassionate. He carried no personal agenda, no hidden motive, no hunger for fame. There are no controversies surrounding his purity, and that's why people trusted him and still trust him today. When he left this world in 1977 in Vrindavan, surrounded by his followers chanting the holy names of Krishna, he left behind a legacy. His movement spans the globe and continues to grow. Temples, farms, schools, and communities are thriving, and thousands daily take inspiration from his life and teachings. Srila Prabhupada's life proves that one pure soul, surrendered completely to the will of the sweet Absolute, can positively impact the lives of millions. He showed that even with no resources, no allies, no guarantees, if one acts with faith, surrender, and love, the impossible becomes possible. He didn't just teach bhakti, he lived it and lovingly shared it with as many people as he could. Through his efforts, bhakti has become known and popular. So the next time you hear something about bhakti that you appreciate, you can offer a little thanks to this bhakti saint of the 20th century. If you'd like to learn more about A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, I'm sharing a couple of resources in the description. There I'll include a link to the movie Hare Krishna, the Mantra, the Movement, and the Swami Who Started It All. It was the winner of the Illuminate Film Festival in 2017. And his biography is also available at the link I'll share below. Thanks for watching Exploring Bhakti with me. Here's a closing question for you. How might one person's life of devotion inspire you to act with greater faith, courage, and love in your own life? If this episode gave you a deeper appreciation for Srila Prabhupada's life and legacy, please share it. As always, I'd appreciate receiving your thoughts, comments, or questions below. Until next time, Swasti Astu Vishvasya. May there be good fortune throughout the universe and for you too